Hello, hello. My name is Bobby McGrath, and I'm here with my counterpart, Heather Sunderland, and we are going to get rolling tonight. You have joined us for a webinar, informational webinar called Unlock the Secrets to Identifying Mold and CIRS in Your Clients. And I realize that there are people here who are not practitioners or wellness providers. And that's okay, because this information we're going to prepare, or that we prepared for you and deliver to you tonight, is not something that you have to be a practitioner to understand. Pretty much anybody in the world could use this information. So we're going to go ahead and get started with this webinar. And before we do, got a little bit of housekeeping to do here. I wanted to show you also, for people that, hold on, we're going to turn off videos here. Bumpa and Linda, you guys can turn off your video. I'm not sure how you got it on, but that's okay.
Okay.
All right.
Can't hear him.
You can't hear us?
No.
I can hear you. Okay. Not sure what to tell you guys. You can try to go out and come back in, but I can't really help you with your volume right now. We're going to go ahead and get started with the rest of the presentation.
What do I do to get the audio?
Hold
I don't
on.
know. Just let her go. Just go. We'll figure it out, Bobby.
All right. We'll come back. All right. I'm going to mute you though. Mute. And let's see, we can take you off video. Mute all. Okay. You guys are at least muted. Okay. So, disclaimer here, we are going to be talking about educational things that are basic educational purposes, not medical information. This is meant to be informational, so please don't consider it to be prescriptive in any way. And we are available for consultation with you should you need to support your complex clients. Hold on just a second. All right, Heather, I'm going to hand it off to you. And just so you all know, we are recording and we will be sending this out to you. So if you had to drop off early at all, you will get this recording in your emails tomorrow afternoon sometime. So welcome, Heather, and she's going to welcome you and give you some tips yourself.
As Bobby said, we're really glad you're here. We're glad for the practitioners who are here, and we're glad for the lay people or potential people who are dealing with mold toxicity and CIRS who are here. We're really, really excited to bring this information to you and to help you recognize the symptoms of mold toxicity and CIRS and some of the initial steps that you can take to see if you or your clients are dealing with mold or CIRS. This information is just a fraction of what we would like to share with you tonight. It's really the tip of the iceberg. So at the end of this, we are going to share a little bit about a deep dive into mold toxicity and CIRS and the regenerative approach. Bobby and I worked really hard the last 9 months creating an online digital course. We're launching live January 6th. So we'll tell you more about that at the very end. But now I really just want to introduce my dear friend and colleague, Bobby McGrath. I will forever be grateful to her because she was the one who suspected that I had mold toxicity and CIRS at a time when I was chasing symptoms and chasing Lyme disease and not getting better. So if it wasn't for her, I really think I would still be chasing symptoms and sick and disabled. She really has been my cheerleader on my journey. And she's just, as a practitioner and an individual, she's just very insightful, very caring, very, very knowledgeable, and just a lot of knowledge about supporting the nervous system and dealing with trauma in clients. So I'm going to introduce her and let her just share a little bit about herself. And I'm going to get quiet.
Thank you, Heather. I appreciate that. As she said, my name is Bobby McGrath, and you can see here, I've got a little resume here. I'm going to go over it pretty briefly, but I have a master's in exercise physiology and clinical cardiac rehab. But what I'm most proud about is my certification in regenerative health and detox. And I'm a practitioner and was trained at the Institute of Regenerative Health through Carrie Drinkwine's program that she spearheaded this last few years. And that is really what has really pushed my practice into the regenerative health area, especially because Heather brought the regenerative approach to me. So I'm super grateful for her. We'll be going through our stories later, but Heather is the reason that I actually even found regenerative health. So yes, I helped her figure out, or at least pointed her in the right direction for the mold and CIRS, but Heather was the one who circled back to me, and I was able to learn a lot about regenerative health and the concept of it. And I'm so grateful that she did, because it is one of the main reasons that I restored my health. So I am happily married to Tim. He's my college sweetheart, and we have 3 adult children, 2 sons and a daughter who are out of the house. And I, in 2018, became a certified health coach and started my business. At the same time, I was really smacked with mold pretty heavily, and I really had to spend some time trying to figure that out. So my health story is that I was able to identify and restore my health from PTSD, mold toxicity, and chronic inflammatory response syndrome, which you're going to learn a lot about tonight. And you're also going to hear about the regenerative approach that both Heather and I have used to restore our health. But my biggest reason why Heather and I joined forces, my biggest reason is that toxin exposure in our modern world is rampant. It's everywhere. Since I was born, there has been so many chemicals put into our environment that actually haven't even been tested. And unfortunately, mold toxicity is a thing. It's a big epidemic, and it's not getting the credit it deserves, and nor is chronic inflammatory response syndrome, unfortunately. It gets misdiagnosed often, and I think that's what Heather and I really struggle with, is when we see people that we know have chronic inflammatory response syndrome and they're getting treatment, they're playing whack-a-mole on their symptoms, they're spending a lot of money, and they're not really getting anywhere. So our goal was to fill the educational gap for providers and to support those suffering from mold so that they do not have to deal with the problems that we were suffering from. And I want people to know the regenerative approach. Okay. Bumpa, I need you to turn it off, because it's like,
You hear me now?
I can hear you. Yeah. I keep muting you.
Just got the audio.
Okay. Okay. Sorry. That was my father-in-law. Sorry about that. So I want people to know the regenerative approach is going to help people. I want people to realize that piece of it, and to have their illnesses be able to be restored using the regenerative approach that we're going to talk to you a little bit about later. So enough about me. I'm going to introduce you to my counterpart, Heather. Heather Sunderland is a warrior. She is a functional health coach, and she has been through the ringer. She is a friend that everybody would want a friend like her. She makes her clients and her friends and family feel seen and heard and held. She's got an amazing faith, and we have prayed over this program that we put together for you. We prayed over the course that we've developed over this, and she spearheaded this and brought it to me and said, we need to do something. And I was happy to join forces with her. So Heather is a kinesiology muscle testing whiz, and I trust her with all of that. And she has really built an amazing practice helping people with mold and CIRS. And I'm just really grateful for her time and her talents. And I wanted to pass this over to her so she can tell you a little bit about herself.
Thanks so much, Bobby. So you'll see on the screen, but my background, I was actually a registered dietitian, diabetic educator. Didn't really know I'd get into the world of Lyme and mold, but it was my own story that brought me there. And I was actually sick for 22 years with undiagnosed Lyme and a lifetime of mold exposure and CIRS, and I have restored my health. So my big why is I want people to know, one, that they can get well, that they can have hope, that no matter what they're dealing with, they can get better. And as Bobby said, this mold piece, toxin piece is a huge missing piece on people's health journey. So we're just really excited to share this information. You'll hear more of my story and Bobby's a little bit later on. So do any of your clients, do they need help, or do you know someone, or do you need help with any of the following? Are you struggling with nerve pain? Do you have brain fog? Do you have fatigue even after a good night's sleep? Do you have difficulty losing weight or putting on weight? Do you have issues like irritable bowel, bloating, gas, constipation? Are you waking up at night urinating often? Or do you or your clients present with multiple chronic conditions? Do you get frustrated or confused or disappointed when a client's not progressing, or for those of you who aren't practitioners, when you're not progressing in your health journey? Um, do you have fear and anxiety as a practitioner when you don't feel confident in knowing how to support someone who has mold toxicity or CIRS?
So I want you to take a few seconds to think about a question. What percentage of illnesses do you think have an environmental component? And come up with that percentage in your mind. And I'm going to give you one more second to think about it, and I'm going to share it. An overwhelming amount, up to 95% of illnesses have an environmental component based off the research that we found. And of the 50% of those can be attributed to poor indoor air quality, in which mold contaminated buildings is the major contributor. Another mold stat that we wanted to share with you is 1 in 4 people are genetically predisposed to struggle to detox mycotoxins from mold. Basically, excuse me, what that means is that you can have 4 people walk into a moldy building, and all 4 people can walk out, and 3 of them can be fine, that can detox well, but there can be one that has a genetic chink in their armor where they may not be able to detox the mold or the mycotoxins or any other type of toxins very well if their body has been set up to have an epigenetics around their genetics to be poor. And so when people are struggling with that, that's where we have problems with, especially with CIRS.
So mold is mighty. There are over 100,000 different species of mold. Now, not all of these are dangerous. They've identified 100 different species of mold that are toxic. So some facts about mold. 70% of the time, you do not see or smell mold. It's a really big problem. The estimate is about 50% of the homes in the US have water damage. I've even heard higher. When you have people who have chronic sinus infections, 93% of these sinus infections can be attributed to mold. Asthma, 50% of the cases of asthma can be attributed to mold. It's a huge problem.
So what is mold? Mold is a fungus that breaks down plant and animal matter and man-made materials. Mold recycles and decomposes plant and man-made materials, like if you think about a log decomposing in the woods. And then mold grows where moisture and feeding materials are. And you don't need a lot of moisture. You just need high humidity. And then mold produces spores to reproduce. And mold is a living organism. So it is something that needs to be killed, where other things are not living organisms that we'll talk about later. What are mycotoxins, which is not mold, it's coming from the mold. Mycotoxins are incredibly small. That's why we showed you this picture of just like one little drip in a pool to give you a good visual. But it's an invisible chemical produced by the mold. And it's the most poisonous aspect of the mold. And the thing about it is it does not have a scent. It cannot be killed, and therefore it's not like mold. It also makes us sick because it crosses the blood-brain barrier and causes systemic inflammation and permeability in the digestive tract. You've heard of something called leaky gut, and that's what that is. And then mycotoxins are too small for us to see with the naked eye. So even if you went into a building that maybe had the mold remediated and cleaned up, there could be mycotoxins still in the building and in the belongings.
So in summary, mold is a fungus and can be fed by water damage in a moist environment. And as Bobby said, it doesn't take a lot of water. to feed mold. It can grow anywhere, even in a new home. And a lot of times, building materials are impacted. They can have water damage on them when they build, or if a house is framed, it can rain. And then it's a beautiful new house, but somebody can get sick. And as Bobby said, mycotoxins don't have a smell, so they can be hidden in our environment. So what is mold toxicity? Basically, it's the buildup of mycotoxins in the body. And this can happen from ongoing mold exposure in your environment, but often it can also be that you've been exposed in your past and you didn't even know it.
Oops, there's one more point
And
there.
yeah, sorry. That's why, someone can leave a moldy environment and they're still sick and they think, well, I left the mold, why don't I feel better? But the bottom line is the mold and the mycotoxins are still in the body. So part of getting well is making sure that we can start to support the body and support detox pathways and get those mycotoxins out of the body and mold. But mold is a great masquerader. It presents as so many other issues where people get labels of asthma, sinus infections, fibromyalgia. It's an illness caused by exposure to the mold spores and then the other biotoxins that come with water damage. So that could be bacteria, endotoxins, mycotoxins. It's often overlooked in conventional medicine because no one's really trained in conventional medicine to address mold toxicity, neither even in the holistic world. It was missed on my journey. So it can cause such a wide range of symptoms. It can be very hard for a practitioner to recognize that someone has mold toxicity. You could have an entire family come in, they're all sick, but they all present very, very differently.
So what are the cause? What does mold actually do to the body? So I'm going to go over this really quickly. Neuroinflammation is one of them, and that was I would have to say is probably my number one thing that happened to me was that my nervous system was incredibly inflamed. There's also mitochondrial damage, which if you most of you here would probably have heard of mitochondrial before, but mitochondria is where we create fuel, the ATP that our body runs on. And when that's damaged, that's when, fatigue can set in, oxidative stress happens, your body doesn't have the fuel to clean it up. And mentioning oxidative stress is just where your body is becoming so acidic that there's just a lot of waste, and it can come from all different places. Can come from toxins and thoughts and stress and foods, but mold causes more oxidative stress, which creates tissue damage. And tissue damage can come in many forms, but a lot of times people have joint issues. I know I had some crazy stuff happening, like with my hands. I started having kind of knobby little knuckles and things like that. Mold can also cause an pre-existing condition like Lyme or EBV to activate. And I know, Heather, you had something happen with that as well.
Yeah, the mold activated I blamed everything on my Lyme, but it was really toxicity and mold.
And then global inflammation. So head to toe, just everything hurts, inflamed. And a lot of times people, when they count up their symptoms, they're just blown away by the fact that mold really does impact so many systems of the body. So mycotoxins, which are what the mold gives off, as we mentioned, impacts your neurotoxicity, which is your nervous system. It makes it toxic, causes an oxidative stress, but it also impacts your immune system. It actually makes it toxic. Mold does. And then it impacts your liver, which is your hugest filter in your system. Mold can actually cause cancers in the body if left untreated for long enough. It impacts your kidneys so that you're not filtering, impacts your GI tract, and even reproductive toxins happen where you're having problems with your reproductive system or even reproducing or having a baby or carrying a baby to term.
So some symptoms of mold toxicity, and keep these in mind and be thinking, do you know anybody who has these symptoms, or are you dealing with these? Insomnia or, disrupted sleep. People can have major brain fog, people can have anxiety, chronic pain, systemic pain, neuropathy, fibromyalgia kind of symptoms. We talked about unexplained weight loss or weight gain. Mentioned the numbness and tingling is neuropathy, very, very common. Metallic taste in the mouth can be from mold, but it can also be from other things as well. Bobby really struggled with, I thought the next one was going to be tinnitus. She struggled with that, vertigo and dizziness for some people, digestive issues, limited intake, SIBO, SIFO, just chronic fatigue during the day, even after a good night's sleep. People can have changes in mood, unpredictable, angry, moody, excessive thirst and dehydration. With kids, bedwetting can be a sign of mold toxicity because, again, it plays into that frequent urination. And hormone imbalances are very common when people have mold toxicity. So I just want you to be thinking about,
Yeah, I was just saying the hair loss was pretty big for both of us, I believe.
Yeah, my hair didn't grow in the front for like 2 years. But think about, do you know anybody or do you have a client who's presenting with some of these symptoms, or they're presenting with lots of different chronic problems? Mold is often at the root of that. So, in summary, mold toxicity can impact multiple systems of the body, and it can lead to a very wide range of symptoms. And it may not be linked to a single cause, but practitioners and individuals really need to be aware of these signs and symptoms so that clients can better be supported, and we can get to the underlying root, because otherwise we're just chasing symptoms and people aren't going to get well. So I'm going to go off camera as I share this part of my story, just because I have some notes to have me not go overboard. But this is me about 16 years ago. My son David, all of us actually were impacted by mold. We didn't know we were living in water damage. My son David had asthma, life-threatening food allergies. He's actually much thinner even now as an adult than he was there, but he had severe ulcerative colitis, hospitalized numerous times. Um, to me, as a practitioner, he has mold toxicity and CIRS, but he has chosen not to go down that route of treating it and follow his conventional docs. My husband, unable to lose weight, metabolic syndrome, and any skin label or disease he was labeled with, we have reversed the skin rashes. He no longer has mold toxicity or CIRS, but he did. But he's still struggling with the metabolic syndrome piece. And myself, I'm going to share a little bit about my story. I grew up, I had asthma, allergies. I didn't know at the time I was living in mold. Ever since I was 3, I was in mold. By the time I was 30, I had daily pain, and I was labeled with fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue. And as time went on, the pain got worse, the labels, changed. And by the time I was 35, I stopped working. I had been a dietitian. I developed very severe daily neuropathy. I had interstitial cystitis, which was like inflammation of the bladder. Almost went to the ER a few times for that. I was actually homebound for 10 years where I couldn't leave the house. I just had so much pain being in a vehicle. So jump ahead, lots of years being sick. At 52, I was actually finally diagnosed with chronic Lyme disease, and I treated naturally with herbs. I really did improve, but I was still unwell. I was struggling to walk, to stand. I had severe issues holding a chiropractic adjustment. I actually entered health coaching school in 2019 to sort of try to figure out what was wrong with me. And I don't know if Bobby remembers, but I was in a zero gravity chair because if I sat upright, like I'm sitting at my desk right now for this webinar, my vertebrae would go out of alignment. So it was
Yep.
pretty crazy. I was at the chiropractor 3 times a week for 8 years. And during COVID, my Lyme resurfaced, and it was that same month I developed hyperthyroidism or Graves' disease, where I would be awake for 72 hours at a time. It was a very difficult, dark season. I really didn't understand what was going on. and I developed active EBV or mono. And that's when Bobby stepped in and saw me reaching out to other health coaching students and said, I think you should look into mold or CIRS. And I also had SIBO at that time, and I did look into mold and CIRS, and she was right. And like I said, I am forever grateful to her. I was down to 10 foods at that time because of the SIBO, and I started treating with a wonderful practitioner, and nothing shifted after 6 months of treatment. I knew I was detoxing, but nothing improved in my diet or my ability to function. And then I met two coaches, Mary and Michelle, who were on another call, who were using this regenerative approach. And I am forever grateful to them because 3 days into the approach, my SIBO started to improve. It didn't go away, but my diet went from 10 foods to 11 to 12, and it just gradually increased. 3 months out, my brain fog had lifted. I stopped needing to go to the chiropractor at 3 months. 6 months out, I was walking without a walker or assistive devices. I had been using walkers, canes, wheelchairs for over a decade. And at 23 months out, I was told I no longer had Lyme, I no longer had mold, I no longer had CIRS, SIBO, Graves, and a long list of other issues. I'm now 4.5 years out. I'm no longer sick. I'm able to walk, to hike, and to participate in life. I am still peeling away a few layers. I was sick a really long time. But if I can get well after 28 years of illness and really totally disabled, so can you, and so can your clients.
So what exactly is chronic inflammatory response syndrome? And we want to make sure that people understand that what that is. It's a complex chronic biotoxin illness. So it's a condition that you get because of toxins. And the biotoxins are toxins from living organisms, like we mentioned, like mold, and viruses, bacteria, and parasites. When the toxin bucket in the body overflows, it leads to multiple impairments in the body, and the immune system and the inflammation that occurs from it can be verified by blood work, which we're going to go over in this course that we're talking about that starts in January. So if that's something that you're interested in, we can share that more with you. But what we want you to know is that CIRS is not always because of exposure to mold or mycotoxins. It can be other things in the environment that create this chronic inflammatory response syndrome, but it often is mold. So here's some symptoms of CIRS that we wanted to share. You know, we could probably tell you 30 of them that we had, but Heather and I decided we would start with 3. So Heather, I'll let you go first. And I see like these red lines. Do you see like red lines on the
I
screen
do.
there?
It looks like I thought it was, yeah, I thought it was a string, but somehow it's on the
Yeah.
screen.
And I
I
would
don't know
like to
why.
get rid of it, but I don't want to destroy the whole program. So we're just going to deal with it.
Um, so one of the symptoms that I had static shocks. I thought it was because I was in the desert, low humidity, and every time I touched something. But as I started to heal, I stopped getting shocks with everything. I had major dysregulation of temperature. I wasn't sweating at all. Again, I thought it was the desert being hot and a dry climate, but like a year out treating, I started sweating when it was 110 in Phoenix, and I was like, "Oh, this is a whole new thing to have sweat dripping off my back." I'll just leave it with those two, Bobby, and you can share yours.
Okay. I would say blurry vision was probably one of my things. I went to the eye doctor and he's like, nope, you know, you don't really need glasses. And we're going to tell you in a minute about a VCS, a visual contrast test that'll tell you why CIRS people have blurry vision. Um, the other thing was morning stiffness or connective tissue pain. That was amazingly very difficult to handle. I was used to working out and I was not able to work out and actually move around afterwards. If I cooled down later on, I would be super stiff. And then I also had temperature regulation issues. At one point, having multiple hot flashes within a day, and I'll tell you more in my story. So one of the things that CIRS does is it impacts the 11 systems of the body. So we listed them out here for you. And basically, it's touching all of those. Now, some people are going to have something that's going to come up for them that's more symptomatic, but we want you to understand that CIRS is complex because of the fact that it does impact all 11 systems of the body in some form or fashion, especially the nervous system, the lymphatic system, and the endocrine system especially.
And I just want to share that these symptoms of CIRS and mold, they really can overlap, but people with CIRS tend to be even sicker than people with mold toxicity.
I completely agree. And you can see it once you see it, it's kind of hard to unsee. And especially once you've been in a CIRS condition, which both of us we've reversed. When you see it again, you realize it. And it's kind of interesting as practitioners. So this is a case study of myself and my husband, Tim. And one house, two stories. Basically, we have a lake house that behind our lake house is a marsh, and someone illegally clear cut some land behind us. And all this water went rushing into our crawl space and flooded it. And we needed to remediate it, which we did, pumped out the water, put in 6 inches of concrete and that kind of stuff. And once it was over, my husband's like, let's go down and check it out. So I went down there with him and got incredibly impacted by mold because yes, they took the water out and they cleaned everything up, but the damage had been done as far as infiltration of mold spores and things like that. And mold was growing, but we couldn't see it and we couldn't smell it. And I developed over 30 symptoms, and I'd been getting exposed because that crawl space is open aired when you lift the hatch to the rest of the house. So I had been getting exposed, but it wasn't until I went down there and really got exposed. And where I want you to understand the two case studies here, two stories, is that although my husband did fail the VCS test, which we're going to talk to you about in a second with his eyes, he did not contract or get the condition of chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And I tested positive with the blood work and he did not. And he did need to detoxify himself, but we both improved with the regenerative health tremendously using that approach. But the thing I want to share with you is that my mold story didn't just start from when I was heavily exposed to mold from a water damaged building in 2018, but it began way back in childhood. I had memories of my basement flooding as a kid and probably not being properly cleaned up, although my parents did their best. My story is rooted in the fact that as I moved through my life, I was on a fast track to burnout, lacking boundaries and trying to fix everyone and everything, which I later found out was a typical pattern of a child of an alcoholic. I had a lot of stored grief, unfortunately, because I was dealing with deaths in my family that were really, really close together. My mom passed of early onset of Alzheimer's in her early 70s, and my older brother passed suddenly at 48 years old, only 10 weeks later. And then my dad passed 3 years later after that. This grief was also coupled with kids leaving for college and leaving the nest, and then my dog passed away. And the stress also was very challenging because within our household, we had some health challenges that contributed to me really kind of succumbing to PTSD. And so when mold came along and I was not doing well with that piece of it and the stress and the grief, it really took me out at the knees. Basically, my body was an open door and mold basically took over in my body. And I suffered from a lot of different symptoms that we mentioned, but in particular, brain fog, severe memory issues, extreme connective tissue pain, like I mentioned, insomnia like I'd never had before, high anxiety, which is also something that I had not experienced before, and then a fight or flight response, which is the nervous system piece of it that was out of control. I actually counted one day and had over 25 hot flashes, blistering hot flashes at one time that I had shared with my neurological chiropractor that was helping me. The other thing that I also struggled with was just normal daily routines and being like mood regulation, being in tears all the time, even like places like the grocery store, I would be in tears and sometimes really had no idea what was triggering it. And it was pretty embarrassing. It took me a while to put the pieces together, but somehow I was able to, also with the help of the neurological chiropractor, to figure out that I was suffering from mold toxicity and CIRS. So I had my answer now. I knew what it was. I'd started on another approach that took me only so far until Heather checked in, thank the Lord. I'm so happy that our paths crossed because without her introducing me to the regenerative approach, I would probably still be suffering. The improvements I made over the course of the next 12 months once I started the regenerative approach helped me let go of pharmaceuticals I'd been using to detox, and I embraced the deep detox strategies we use as food as medicine, which is the regenerative approach. Although my body is still working to repair my nervous system, I no longer am suffering from multiple mold and CIRS symptoms. And I want practitioners and clients to know that they can do the same, especially if you decide to go on a deeper dive with us in our course. The last piece of my story I'd like to share is that chronic stress and past traumas definitely set up a person for having more difficulty detoxing any kind of toxin from their body, but especially mold. It's the piece to the puzzle that's absolutely necessary to be addressed by healthcare providers in order to restore a person's health back to homeostasis. This will be an area in our course we are excited to give you more training about. So let's talk a little bit really quick about the long-term implications of chronic inflammatory response syndrome and mold. As I've mentioned, mold nervous system really dysregulates your mold dysregulates your nervous system. And Heather mentioned about the gut dysbiosis. That was something that she really struggled with. Increased risk of cancer, which is really unfortunate that a lot of times people don't really realize the root of their cancer is the fact that they're toxic from mold. Hormone imbalances, metabolic syndrome. So a lot of times people struggle with weight loss and they're trying all the things and they don't realize it, that they're obese because of toxins. Blood sugar regulation, which is definitely something I suffered from, and I think you did too, Heather, right?
Oh, I did. My sugars were going up, 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 even when I was down to 10 foods and just eating like meat and a few vegetables. And then I had thyroid issues, very common hypo or hyperthyroidism. And most people who come to all people who come to us with mold and CIRS are dealing with elevated loads of other things like parasites, viruses, and bacteria. And any bacteria that's already in the body or virus, it can activate because that immune system's suppressed. So it's very common for EBV to increase and people to have an increased risk of other autoimmune diseases because the immune system's not working right. So, if you're a practitioner or an individual, the next few things we're going to go over are some ways you can assess if someone has CIRS. This was developed by Dr. Richie Shoemaker. Basically, it's a symptom cluster list. If you've got 8 symptoms from 3 different blocks, that along with the visual contrast sensitivity test, is a way a practitioner can actually diagnose you where you don't have to do a whole bunch of other tests. And you can take a screenshot of this. You can find it online if you look up symptom clusters for CIRS. But it's just a real simple way to assess a client or an individual. The VCS test was also designed by Dr. Richie Shoemaker. It's a wonderful starting place to see if somebody's potentially dealing with water damage. The test is an online computer test. It is $15 to take, so very inexpensive. The optic nerve of the eye gets inflamed when we're exposed to toxins. And basically, you're looking at lines that are different shades of gray, and they're like going to the left or the right. And so most everybody I've ever worked with, including myself, we failed the test, but it's a wonderful way to track your progress because you'll see improvement. And it's a great way if somebody thinks they're re-exposed to mold to go home and take the test. And if they did worse, and Bobby's going to go over this, it's just a wonderful tool.
So this is just a quick look at what you would get when you do the test online. You get this email to you and it shows you your left eye or your right eye. You can see this was a fail for the person who took it. And the red dots are where they weren't able to discriminate between left or right or the grayscale. And then it also has symptoms, which is nice, the symptoms tracker. Do you have this symptom or not? And as you do the test over time, multiple times, you'll start to see progress when you're following the protocols.
And I encourage all of you to consider whether you're dealing with mold or you're a practitioner, go home and take the test so that you know what it is. So these are some guidelines and suggestions when someone should test their environment. So if somebody's on a protocol and they're not getting better, I say usually in 30 days. If they're not getting better, if they're not seeing some positive shifts, we're going to talk about how to test your environment for mold. If someone has these symptoms that are connected to mold and CIRS, anybody who has Lyme, mold should be the first thing you rule out because you cannot get better from Lyme if you're living in a toxic home. And anybody who has autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, cancer, you should look at mold as an underlying root issue. So this is how we test a good starting place for someone to test their home. If you want to rule out water damage, this will not tell you where the water damage is. This will only tell you if the home is negatively impacting your health. So ERMI stands for Environmental Readiness Mold Index. It was really designed by the EPA to compare homes, not for testing, but it is sort of a gold standard. If you don't have any evidence of water damage, to start here, it's a dust cloth test that you do yourself, and it tests for 36 molds, 29 of which are toxic molds, and the remaining molds are outdoor molds. So it's about $240 to do that test. So want to share a little bit about the regenerative approach because this information isn't out there, and it was a game changer for me and all the clients I see. They've come from other approaches and they're stuck. So I'm going to go over some of these things, but what I love about this approach is it's creating an internal environment in the body so that the body can do what God designed it to do to bring the body back into health. And because I was sick for so long, 28 years and 22 undiagnosed Lyme, all the traditional approaches to mold and CIRS just weren't moving the needle in my health. What's very different about this approach that's so key is nourishing and alkalizing. I'm going to hit on that in a second. But the first step is always removing yourself from the toxic environment, whether that's remediating or getting out until you remediate. That's the hardest step, but that's the first step. The next step is always opening up those detox and drainage pathways. Our bowels have to be moving. Our lymph needs to be supported when we're toxic. Many people need their liver, gallbladder, kidneys supported. Everybody's a little different, but those pathways have to be supported. And then the nourishing and alkalizing piece is the part that I find other approaches miss. And when we nourish and alkalize, we're eating in a way that's going to help us detox. It's going to support our liver and our detox pathways. And it's also going to starve these pathogens, viruses, bacteria, and parasites. And I've experienced, and Bobby knows, I've had 2 years of things dying and leaving my body. And that was not by me taking things to kill. I ate in a way to starve things. And my body started to release on its own, and I couldn't even stop it. But it was beautiful because I didn't have to go in and kill.
No, and that's what's nice about it is that the regenerative approach, we want it to be a gentle detox. It's not to go in and fire hose someone. There's a lot of protocols out there that are just like take it until you're fallen over kind of thing and giving you lots of Herxheimer reactions where your body is just kind of rebelling against the fact that you're trying to detox. So the regenerative approach goes at the person's pace. And that's what muscle testing is such an amazing thing. And Heather's excellent at that to help figure this out. And so we want to do gentle detoxing, not overwhelming the body system, because then that system, like say your kidneys are backed up or your liver, your gut's having problems, you're going to have problems with your brain. You're going to have problems with your skin because it's got to come out somewhere. We're also working with the regenerative approach to restoring the gut. So when you remove the toxin, then the body has a chance to restore. But if you're constantly being exposed, it can't. So we got to rebuild the gut. And then we also have to decrease the toxic and pathogenic burdens on the body, which Heather was saying we're leaving, when she was saying things were leaving on their own. It's her body, her nervous system, and her immune system came back online. Her gut improved, and her body did what God, designed it to do naturally to bring the body back into balance. And so with the regenerative approach, we're not big fans of tons and tons of supplements, and especially not pharmaceuticals and things like that, because we feel like there's a way for the body to upright itself if you give it the right environment. So that's really what the regenerative approach is trying to bring to the table that other approaches just really kind of gloss over or don't address at all. So right now, I want you to think, would you like to feel more confident about supporting a client with mold or CIRS, or would you like to feel, if you're not a practitioner, if you're a person that's struggling with mold, or you think you might have chronic inflammatory response, would you like to feel more confident about the path that you're on? Is there someone you think you can help right now, but you just really don't know how to help them with their mold or their chronic inflammatory response syndrome? And then I want you to think a little bit about our recent weather in these last few years with the global warming and the hurricanes and all of that kind of stuff. Do you think mold toxicity is going to get worse with our extreme weather? Because the reports are showing that it is. So right now we want to invite you to join our mission, and Heather and I are going to talk a little bit about what that mission is, but we want to bring you along on this roadmap of a supported plan. Whether you are a practitioner that's interested in the regenerative health approach and you'd like to learn how to do that, or you are a client or a person in the public that wants to learn how to use the regenerative approach for yourself, we want to invite you to join our mission.
So our mission is twofold. We want to fill that educational gap. We want to make sure that healthcare providers have the knowledge to start to identify mold and CIRS more efficiently so people aren't suffering for a long time and they can get better quicker. But we also want to be able to support clients in restoring their health using the regenerative approach because it's a quicker approach, it's a less costly approach, and we just want to see people get their life back and feel better sooner. So if you're a practitioner who wants to make a difference and feel confident supporting your complex clients, our course, Navigating Mold and CIRS, Expert Insights for Practitioners is for you. And anybody who's not a practitioner, I want you to know this course, we're marketing it for practitioners, but it's very appropriate for individuals. It's all application oriented, how to apply it to yourself, how to apply it to your patients.
So when we were doing some research, we found a quote by Dr. Scott McMahon that he said possibly every doctor in the United States is treating mold illness and they just don't realize it. And the problem with this is most doctors do not have the training to identify mold as an illness. So that's where you come in. The healthcare system needs more practitioners and needs the public to be trained or at least learn or be aware in identifying and supporting mold and chronic inflammatory response illness. So if you're ready to elevate your knowledge and sharpen your health detective skills, we would love it if you would come dive in to our comprehensive practitioner training. And it's designed to be laser focused. So we didn't add a lot of fluff in there. We're not trying to just waste your time. We're trying to get you the information that you need to be more aware, to fine tune your practitioner skills, become a detective, and help you be able to identify and feel truly confident in supporting clients that have mold and CIRS and to be able to identify them, because you may want to go down the rabbit hole with them and work on it, or you may be a practitioner that says, you know what, I'm identifying that you're a mold person. I do not want to treat that. And you'll be able to have the opportunity to refer those people out.
So this is a one-time opportunity. This is our pre-launch pricing. If you're interested, we are not going to be offering it at this price again for practitioners. This course, what you're going to get, we're going to be doing it live in January. So it's 15 modules, but it'll be 12 weeks. Every module has a quiz. We are going to have a live Q&A because we're doing it live. So that's not going to be part of the course in the future. Everybody who purchases the course is going to have a comprehensive resource guide, pretty much links to all the tests that can be done on the home, all the testing options on the body, any resource we're recommending, binders, things we use to support the body and detox pathways, all are going to be in this resource guide. Links to podcasts, movies, you name it, are in the guide. The other thing that's really unique is we're going to have a private community. for practitioners taking the course, and there'll be a separate community for individuals who take the course, so we can be a community and support each other. I'm just going to highlight a few things in the modules. Deep knowledge on environmental testing for the home, and then deep knowledge on how to test the body. We're going to have case studies throughout, examples of tests and looking at tests, remediation guidelines, deep dive into the regenerative approach, very big deep dive. Bobby wrote an amazing module on the nervous system. We're going to go into binders. There's so many different binders on the market. And we're also going to compare and contrast the other approaches on the marketplace, because as individuals, I think practitioners and individuals need to know what options are out there. And sometimes people need to pull from different things. And our last module will be fully looking at case studies of clients. So if you're ready to ditch the confusion and overwhelm, the frustration and the lack of results and progress with yourself or your clients, and you want to gain a plan to move forward that works and it's simple, it's economical, and to feel just more confident in your approach, our course is for you.
So right now, I want you to think about this presentation and what we've provided, which is really just the tip, right, Heather? The tip of the iceberg.
My
with
gosh, yeah.
information. Yeah, I mean, it's just tiny amounts of information. So if you enjoyed this, I think the course is going to be an excellent thing for you to dive into. But what we really want you to do is consider joining our mission to learn about mold and CIRS, to think outside the box about mold and CIRS, to grow your own knowledge, and then grow your practice, grow your knowledge, grow your reach. And then in the end, when you learn, think, and grow with us, you're going to change a life, whether it's your life or someone else's life. You will change a life when you join this mission. So we want to share with you what our course is. It is launching in January, on January 6th. We're going to be going off, I believe it's 7 p.m. Central Time, for an hour and 15 minutes every Monday for 12 weeks. And regular price is $14.97, but we're doing a pre-launch price, meaning this is our first time through. It's going to be live. We're showing up for you, and hopefully you can show up with us for $497, which is 67% off. And we've given the option, if you are not able to pay in full, you can do 2 payment options. And we've got a link in the chat. So if you are something that you are interested in getting going with, we can give you that link right away. You can go to the chat, copy it, and you can paste it into your browser or click on it, and it'll take you right to our sales page. You will also get information emailed to you with the replay after tomorrow sometime, once we've loaded that up, and you'll get the information about the course that way too. So keep an eye for that. One of the things that's pretty cool. What?
Sorry, I was grabbing the link. Sorry, I wasn't looking at the slides.
Oh. One of the things that's cool is we're going to also, anyone who finishes the 12 weeks with us and they complete all the quizzes, which we're not tricking you on these quizzes, they're for comprehension, is we will send a certificate of completion, which a lot of people enjoy because they can use it in their social media. You could potentially petition for use if you need continuing education credits. So we will be sending a certificate of anyone who completes the course and does the quizzes.
So if you act within the next 24 hours, we're doing something special just to incentivize you. We will give you a 30-minute strategy session with Bobby and I together to answer questions, to support you in your health journey, and to support you any way you want to be supported.
Yep. You can ask.
So that expires tomorrow at 5 o'clock Central Time. So that's for people who purchase by 5 o'clock tomorrow.
Yep. And we put it in as a fast action bonus because we know that people can sit on the fence and wait. And we know that the course doesn't start until January, but we also know that there's people out there that need help now. There's people out there that want to get going on something or get support. And so that's one of the reasons we put this fast action bonus in there.
So if you're passionate about health and wellness, we are so excited to have you join us on our mission. If you want to help other practitioners transform their understanding of mold toxicity and CIRS, become an affiliate to our program. our 12-week course, Navigating Mold and CIRS Expert Insights for Practitioners, and earn some money while you're making an impact and helping others learn about mold and CIRS. So you will earn a 15% commission on each person who you share your link with who chooses to buy and take the course. So that's $74.55. So you're expanding, you're marketing for us, you're expanding our reach. And if you're, you can be a practitioner to be part of the affiliate program, or you can be an individual. It really doesn't matter. You're expanding into a market that we may not have a reach to.
Yep.
There will be an email that's going to go out in a few days about the affiliate program. If any of you are interested in learning more about the affiliate program and you don't, want to wait, then email us at support@navigatingmoldandsurs.com if you have any questions and you're impatient.
Yep. So we pretty much lined it out here. Next steps would be sign up for the course, 12 weeks. It's recorded, so we know it's live. And if you can't show, it will be recorded. You'll have a place you can go and watch it at your leisure. Keep an eye on your email and check your spam folder. There's people after last week, we did a Monday session and they were like, where's my replay? Where's my stuff? And because it's a newer address that it's being sent from, it may go to your spam or junk, depending on your email service provider. We don't really have control over that. Sign up for the affiliate. If this is something that you think is worthwhile, we would love for you to be an affiliate, whether you are a practitioner, and get excited to learn, think, and grow and change a life. And looking forward to January 6th coming on board with us.
I just want to say one thing, Bobby. I put the links in the chat. There is a different link for practitioners who went to the Institute of Regenerative Health. So if you're not a practitioner who went to IORH, that first link, that's your link for the course. You will get it in an email. The second link is the link for the practitioners from IORH.
Yep, there are two different types of links. So right now, we want to thank you for attending. We know people probably have places to go, but we would love to have you have a time to raise your hand or place a question in the chat. We're also leaving this spot or this page up here with our contact information. We've got emails. You can reach us. We each have our own website personally, but we also have our conjoined website with the Navigating Mold and CIRS, and you can reach us pretty much anywhere. And we hope that you follow us and stick around and answer questions.
There's some questions here in the chat, and I'm sorry I interrupted you, Bobby. Tanya asked, what's the difference between CIRS and MCAS? Can I get started on that? And then you can chime in.
Absolutely.
So MCS is mast cell activation syndrome. So it is different from chronic inflammatory response syndrome. Mast cells are found throughout the body, but CIRS and mold exposure, every client I've ever worked with who had mast cell activation syndrome was living in mold. So that's just been my experience as a coach, that the root is often toxicity. It may not just be mold, but it's toxicity, but they are separate conditions. But mast cell activation can be a symptom of CIRS and mold, or a label that falls under CIRS and mold. So if you don't address toxicity in the body, you don't address the environment. I have a client right now who has mast cell activation syndrome and PANS and PANDAS, and some of her kids have PANS. She's living in a water damaged building and the levels are not low levels, so they are much more symptomatic. When they get out, when they're out of the house, they do so much better, but all of their PANS and mast cell symptoms, when they're in the house, rear their ugly heads. I hope that helps on that one.
Yeah.
You asked, well, go ahead.
Do we get a certificate of completion? Yeah, we covered that. You do get a certificate of completion. And then
what diet do we recommend? Do you want to talk on that, or do you want me to talk?
I'll share a little bit, kind of to answer the question. It says, what diet do you recommend? What do you advise to eat and not eat? And is it doable? And so I'm gonna share the doable part, and Heather, you can expound on the other piece of it, which is, what to do. First of all, I think anytime you are approaching food has a lot of attachments to your life growing up. and addictions, food um, things that you do traditionally in your home. And so when somebody says, is it doable? It really just depends. It depends on how bad you want to get better. And I know for Heather and I, when we found the regenerative approach, we were all in because we had suffered and we didn't want to suffer anymore. So somebody said, you know, you need to cut out these things right now and get your body alkalized. That's what I did. And it was doable because I knew the bigger why. And I think a lot of the CIRS piece of it is you need to shift your mindset. You're going to have to work on a lot of different things, not just your eating, but your nervous system and your sleep and your boundaries and how you treat and care for yourself and all these different things. So I'll let you talk about the food piece of it, Heather.
Yeah, I mean, I had to eat very, very alkaline, high fruit, high vegetable. I even did fruit fasting. Everybody's different. We both teach people to listen to their body. When I met Bobby, you were eating healthy, but you were eating meat. I had to go off meat. I was encouraging her to try to go off meat to move the needle for a season. Bobby knows I'm back on healthy, cleanly sourced meat now, but I couldn't do that when I was sick. It just was hindering my detox. I really have learned you have to listen to an individual. And we're going to teach that in the course, but increasing alkalinity and diet is huge for supporting detox pathways. And those alkaline foods are our fruits and vegetables, and decreasing the really high acidic foods and processed foods and dairy. Um, but we meet people where they're at. I didn't go from eating keto basically and 10 foods to eating fruits and vegetables right away. My gut needed to heal. It was a process. So it is, you have to also listen to your body. My husband never did all fruit on the healing journey. I did 90 days all fruit, part of the journey with superfood shakes and amino acids. So everybody's different. But we're going to teach the basic principles and how to personalize them for people.
And I see, Tanya, I see a lot of I guess, worry and concern with the fruit piece of it and mast cell. And you're exactly right. There is conflicting information out there that, oh, fruit is going to cause this and that, and diabetes and things like that. The thing about the regenerative approach, especially with the muscle testing, where we can specifically test, what's going to be best for people, is you go slow. You try something and you see if it works. And there's different fruits and different levels of fruits and different kinds of fruits. And there's really alkaline fruits, like astringent fruits, like citrus and things like that. If the mast cell activation is occurring with that, then you don't use those fruits. You do the fruits that are more milder and what they call subacid fruits and things like that. So it takes somebody that knows that information to help guide a mast cell person through that, because it's not just mast cell. It's not just one thing. It's mold, it's mycotoxins, it's mast cell activation. So mast cell activation is a unique thing along with CIRS. And so it is definitely something that takes a while to figure out. And I would tell you that you just would have to kind of try one thing at a time, because when you try multiple things at a time, you really don't know what's not working and you don't know what is.
Mast cell activation, you have to go. I've had lots of mast cell clients. I've had clients improve if they're not in mold very quickly, like 2 months off, getting off mast cell activation when I was early on and didn't totally understand what I was doing, but I was using the regenerative approach. But the environment is the first biggest key. If you're in water damage and you're in levels that you're having symptoms, and everybody's very different what they react to, the healing's not going to happen if you're being exposed. If you're out of exposure, it's then finding the right approach and supporting your body properly. But my mast cell activation clients go really low and slow. Everything we do is teeny tiny, doses, listening to their body and using what they do tolerate, what we know they tolerate.
So
But good
Tanya had
questions.
another
And yeah, she
question.
asked about handouts. Every module, just about, except the first intro module, has like a PDF, like things that reinforce everything that we're teaching. So you, as an individual or a practitioner, have a nice, concise way of, understanding, hey, these are the tests for mold toxicity. These are the tests for the environment. So every module except probably the first and the last one that has a case study has great handouts that we've developed.
Yeah.
But there's no handbook. There's no
No.
handbook.
No, and that's why there's videos, because the videos are pretty much the handbooks. You can go back and watch the video over and over and over as many times as you need to take notes or write something down. And because this is a new launch of a course, anytime we update the course or we add something new, you get that. You don't have to pay extra for that. And especially because you are first time going through this course with us, this course is $497, and someone was saying they didn't see the price. It's $497 for a 15 module, 12-week course. This is like very, very, very inexpensive for the amount of information and tools you're getting and experience from two practitioners that have actually walked the walk and also are reaching back and helping other patients get and clients get through this. So I think it's going to be a piece to the puzzle that is just not out there. There's just not courses out there with people that have recovered like Heather and I have and are certified regenerative. I'm a regenerative health coach. Heather's a certified functional health coach. So we feel like we're bringing a lot to the table. It says here, Tanya asks, do people, CIRS and mold people have food sensitivities like mast cell, like no gluten, no dairy, no sugar, no citrus, avocados and tomatoes? It really does depend. You can't blanket a CIRS person like that they always have those issues, because Heather had things that she reacted to that I didn't. So that's why CIRS is even more complicated sometimes, because it is so intricately individual, whether that is your weak link or you're having reactions to something or not. And that's where the subtleties and the complexity are so important for a practitioner to work with you so that they can help you through those times.
But it is very normal when people have been exposed to mold for to be damage to the gut, because mycotoxins go in and damage the gut microbiome, and there's dysbiosis and there's leaky gut. So certain people may develop SIBO, SIFO, people develop histamine issues, mast cell. But my husband and I, what we needed to do, our foundation was the same. What we needed to do, right? We used the regenerative approach, but the individual, how we supported our body was very unique to each of us, because he had like skin rashes on the journey. My symptoms were very different, having Lyme for so long and the process of healing, and how I needed to support, my journey. So each person is very, very unique. There's no one blanket. There are approaches and foundations that help someone get well, but each person is going to be very unique as to what they need to do to restore their health. And that's where somebody needs somebody trained to be able to help them on the journey and recognize their symptoms. And I do use, and Bobby does too, we both use muscle testing, applied kinesiology, which is going to be in the course a little. It's been a huge tool for me to be able to help over 800 clients who really, all the clients I saw really, really sick, presented, many of them very much like I did. I would not be able to help those kind of clients if I wasn't using applied kinesiology to know what support they needed, and how much of that support to give them. It really has made it very easy to deal with a complex client. It takes the guesswork out of it.
Yeah. I put the link again in Craig. You had asked how do we sign up and pay? And there's a link is in the chat, and you will also get emails. But if you want to do tonight, you can just click on the Navigating Mold and CIRS. It says course sign up on it. That will take you right to the sales page and you can get started. To answer your second question, can we get info sooner than January 6th? Anyone who signs up tonight within the next 24 hours can do a 30-minute call with Heather and I. And that call is kind of like, we call it like just a strategy call, because some people may be calling or wanting to spend time with us to pick our brain on like their clients. And some people may be an actual person that has issues. So we're calling it a strategy call for that purpose, so that you can spend the 30 minutes, and we're hopefully going to just make sure we're laser focused. If you have all of your questions ready to go, that we can help you. As far as getting started sooner on the course, I would say no. January 6th is when we're going to be kicking off, because it is a live course. but there's probably something that if you need personal support or help with us, we have some things in place to help our clients or the public with that as well.
Yeah, my question for Craig is, are you a practitioner or are you an individual looking for help? We see clients together, we see clients individually if you need one-on-one support and coming up with a individualized protocol, and support for you. The course will be recorded, so it will be digitally uploaded. So anybody who can't make it live, you're in a different country and the time zone makes it difficult, everything will be uploaded digitally. We just wanted to do it live the first time because we're both educators. It's so much nicer knowing that there's people listening that we can interact with and answer questions with, because we've recorded some of the modules, but it just was so dry. It was different than
Yeah.
talking to knowing people are there.
Yep. And the thing you also need to remember too is there's going to be a community. It's a free community. It's a place like a Facebook group, but it's in a different location. It's not on Facebook. And you will be able to interact with people that are in the course themselves and asking questions and we'll be monitoring that. But it's also a lot of times people really do well with their working either on their business or they're working on their own personal health, or they just like to feel like they are not the only one going through whatever it is they're going through. Doesn't matter what it is, that you have a community to interact with.
Okay, can I respond?
Sure.
Is that, I just didn't know if it was appropriate here at this time, but yeah, my name is Craig and I'm kind of a both, but I'm real, I'm like you both, I don't know, sounds like about maybe a decade in lag. Very problem child. I've been diagnosed with every syndrome in the book, and mold is probably one of my I know I've got metal stuff going on. Without getting into my whole thing right here with everybody on, my question, I guess, would be, from what I know and all of the protocols that I've tried, I've tried most of them, if I feel like all of them, like you both. It's quite a journey. But when we get to given that there's, I think you said thousands of different molds, and you identify, we're lucky enough to find, let's say 5 strains of, there's some biological hazards in your body, it's everywhere. Then we go into, I'm sure somewhere along the journey here, you go, well, okay, you need supplements A, B, C, D, and E. And then my question would be, how do you discern what that is? It sounds like muscle testing, but then when you do advertise the supplements, I'm sure they're spendy. And then how do you know the efficacy of those supplements and they're contaminant free of heavy metals and other contaminants in whatever vendor you're using? So maybe you could just maybe address a little bit about, once you identify the bad guys, how do you kill them in the body? And I'll shut up. Thank you.
We don't want you to shut up. We appreciate you asking questions.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Do you want to go or do
Heather,
you want me to go?
I have things spinning through my head right now, but go ahead and I will
Okay.
jump
Well,
on it.
I mean, all the products that we both use, right? They're things that people that are well tested. Like, I don't know if you've heard of Cellcore. Cellcore's been around a long time. It designed for mold and CIRS, herbs and whole food, no additives in their products. So we're using things that are very, very clean. We're muscle testing for what people need. We're not, yeah, we're not using anything that's not tested, or we haven't used with clients, we haven't used ourselves. But anybody who's dealing with chronic conditions, whether we want to label it CIRS or you have other labels, we have to look at the entire picture. So when I and Bobby, when we do muscle testing, we will muscle test. I do this on a discovery call. I will muscle test what's your heavy metal load, 0 to 10, 10 being the highest. What's your parasite load? What's your bacterial load? What's your viral load? What's your mold load? What's your toxic load? When I see that, and I can muscle test so much more, but on a free call, when I see that, I know right away, does someone have CIRS based on the numbers? Does somebody have mold toxicity? We can, most of the people I see, all of those loads are high. And so I know with everybody I see who has chronic problems, we have to address all of it. But we can use diet very powerfully, and certain things that bring down loads that don't cause lots of symptoms or herxes. So it's just very personalized to the person. Protocols don't have to be, Yeah, super expensive. When you've been sick a long time, like I was, 28 years, it's a different journey when somebody's been sick a long time. It's a longer journey. It can be a more uncomfortable journey, and it's a more costly journey. The shorter amount of time somebody's been sick, but I've had people sick 20 years that, I mean, a year out, they're no longer sick, but their bodies, we've created an environment, their body's releasing stuff. And that piece can be uncomfortable when the body lets go. But we know how to support the body in that. But yeah, there are symptoms on the healing journey for people, and they look different. Bobby and I had very different symptoms. We still, very different symptoms in the healing journey, and we can't predict how people are going to respond to the process of things leaving and
Right.
moving out. But the more we support you and make sure your pathways are supported and moving and not backed up, the more we support you and muscle test what your body wants, it takes that guesswork out of it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I guess here's I'll just say this from my journey. I think what I'm learning here, the hardest way you can learn it is I've got lethal levels of mercury in my system and have for 20 years. And what I'm learning here is that really hammered me. That was my big domino that tipped over. And I've been to numerous homeopaths, naturopaths, chelation, EDTA, DMPS. We can't get the mercury out of my system. So therefore, I believe that caused all the cellular inflammation that you calling and labeling CIRS. I've got that. And then off that weakened immune system, then I win a parasite infection, fungal infection, and all of that. So everything is partying in my body. They're having a blast. I'm dying. And so while I'm open-ended, but if you guys, if you're not confident, I think I just come to this, come to the conclusion, if you don't have a magic wand that you can get rid of heavy metals, and I mean lethal levels of metal in the body, then my clock is just ticking. So, and so if you do, I'm all ears, because I've seen numerous doctors and they'll talk a big game, but we just can't get my mercury load down. So that's
No,
kind of
it's
where
also,
I'm at.
no, there are wonderful products out there to bring down heavy metal loads.
Yes.
Everybody I work with has high heavy metal loads, but which heavy metals may be different. I have a lot of clients with gadolinium toxicity, which is a heavy metal from MRIs that there's no specific binder for. Um, but we can bring those levels down. It's just finding the right heavy metal binder that your body muscle tests for, that your body wants. When you go to other practitioners, they're often not using applied kinesiology and muscle testing. And if you don't muscle test for a product and your body doesn't want it, it's not going to be as effective. I
Okay.
paid practitioners to muscle test me for years. Um, and then
Yeah.
they sent me to take courses in it. And it was just a huge game changer for my ability on my journey to get better. But like I said, there are symptoms in the process, but we can muscle test loads coming down. We can do testing to verify heavy metal loads coming down as well. But yeah, the heavy metal loads can come down.
I wanted to just
Thank you.
put something out there too, Craig, that you got to shut the front door and you got to open the back door. And so if there's still things in your environment that are creating an epigenetic structure in your body, internal terrain that's allowing the parasites to stick around, which the parasites hold heavy metals. And so if the parasites are getting to stick around because the terrain is allowing it, you're going to have high heavy metal loads. There's no question about it. So one of the things the regenerative approach does is I like to say, helps you close the front door, locks the front door, gets your gut sealed up, opens the back door, which is your detox pathways, right? So one of the biggest things is when a person's detox pathways, which is your skin, your breath, your kidneys, your liver, as far as moving things through in your digestive tract. And if those things are not working properly, all of them, and there's a kink somewhere in the hose, you're going to struggle with releasing what you want, what your body's trying to do. And so the nervous system gets involved. I don't know if you've done much nervous system regulation, but the nervous system is kind of the overseer of everything So if it's running around going, the sky is falling, the sky is falling, the body goes into fight or flight and it conserves and it doesn't release. It will not let you release and restore and do all of the things that the body, God designed it to do because it's in fight or flight. So one of the things that Heather and I really push to work with our clients on, especially the ones that are had this long journey, right? You've had this very, very long journey. You've tried everything. There is no question in my mind that you don't have the will to get better. We just need to figure out what piece to the puzzle hasn't been put into place for you. So a lot of times people are like, well, I need more testing. I need to show it in black and white, blah, 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 blah. To be honest, you just need to do the work. And I don't mean it in that way, like you haven't done the work, because I know once someone told me when I first started regenerative health, she's like, well, you really haven't detoxed until you've done X, Y, and Z. And I went right back at the practitioner and I said, that is not true. I don't like that comment. I've worked my you know what off to get to where I am. I just
Right.
haven't maybe been doing the right order of things and focusing on some things that maybe I should have been focusing on, which for me was going back and addressing my nervous system, getting it settled down, letting my body know it's safe, know that I don't have to save everyone and everything, and getting calm so that my nervous system can go, okay, now I can go out and figure out what's out there that's friend or foe. And so I'm offering that to you as just an avenue that maybe you haven't like explored yet. But the one thing that Heather and I are not doing is throwing $1,000 chests at you and of tons of blood work and things like that, because we just go to the terrain. What's going on in the terrain? What are your symptoms? How can we help you? And yes, we do have a very good product that we both use in our practice, and so does our regenerative community for heavy metals. And it's something that's excellent, and it's not something that probably a lot of the doctors have because it's not mainstream in that world.
Okay, fair enough. Thank you so much. I appreciate the explanation.
Yeah, no
Thanks
problem.
for
I
your
I hope we did
question.
do that. Yeah, we appreciate you
Yeah, thanks.
speaking up because I know it's difficult to do that in a group setting like this, but I think your questions help other people when we answer as best we can.
Sure.
All right. So,
So
do you have any other
Tanya,
questions, Heather?
Tanya, you said so taking binders makes you way more anxious um, and sore. And the bottom line is we don't take binders until your pathways are open. And I don't give binders until I know your pathways are open and that you muscle test for a binder. And then the binder we specifically muscle test you for. There are people though who are very sensitive to binders. And when people get anxiety, it always makes me wonder if you're still in mold. That's just a question I have for you, Tanya. Um, you can have anxiety when you're detoxing, when you're out of mold, but that's been my experience when people are in mold. That's when I see the anxiety. Um, but yeah, it's really about finding what's right for you. And that's where there's not like, oh, well, if you take this, this is going to work for you. Because when I work with people and Bobby does the same thing, we both muscle test what someone needs um, or what's highly beneficial. And if you don't muscle test for it, I don't use it. And it saved me money. Getting out of mold is fully, yeah. I'm not sure. Getting out of mold, is that a question?
Getting out of
No,
mold
I mean,
fully
there's,
is impossible.
yeah, I mean, not, we're all going to be exposed to toxic molds.
Yeah.
Yes. There's mold in our homes, but we're looking at levels that your body doesn't react to. So we're looking for low levels of toxic molds. And everybody's different. My house had building material mold. I do fine in my house. I healed in my house. My levels were not levels that said get out, but I had other friends who had mold toxicity who would come into my house. And to this day, even though they're not sick, they react in my house because of what they were exposed to in their home and the levels they were exposed to. So we're all different. So if you're in low levels of toxic mold and your body is tolerating it, then that's fine. If you're not, we can support the body in mold, but I cannot promise anybody to. I've had people improve, I've had people get better, but they sort of hit a wall and they're spending a lot more money trying to support their body because the environment, like Bobby was talking about, closing up,
The front door.
not letting the front door, right? We're closing up the front door, not letting things in. If you're in an environment that has water damage and it's impacting you and you have symptoms, it's hard. I have had my first client ever got 50% better in a very high mold environment. She had Lyme and CIRS, and it was sort of, and I had another coach coming alongside me, guiding me, and all we used was food. We didn't use all the other things that Bobby and I have access to now that we know can really support somebody. And she did, yeah, she did get better, but it was a painful process because she was so symptomatic in the process because she was in mold. Um, so yeah, there are things that people can do in a house that has water damage, and it really just depends on you and how your body's reacting.
What are the top 3 foods for fighting mold? You know,
Fruit. I want to say fruit. I want
fruit,
to say
fruit,
fruit.
fruit.
Any fruit you tolerate because it's going to help move your lymph. It's going to help you detox. It's going to help alkalize things so things die. And if you, I couldn't eat fruit when I got started. I couldn't eat, I had all these major food groups I couldn't eat. I could just eat meat and about 3 vegetables. Um,
The one thing I want to tell who's ever left here, it's not always about what we put in our mouth.
no,
It's about what's in between our ears. And it's about how you treat yourself, how you love yourself, how you love others, what boundaries do you have? Because I will tell you, if you have a leaky gut, you have leaky boundaries in your life. And I know this from experience. And when you tighten up your boundaries and you really do a bird's eye overlooking view of your life and how you let others treat you and how you let others speak to you or how you overgive or overshare, you look at all of that and you start to pull back and you start to refine your boundaries, your gut will start to heal. But I understand when someone's in mold that it's very difficult. But one of the things that Heather just mentioned earlier, the place where I was exposed is a wood log cabin. Wood is porous. So we could, clean everything, throw everything out, do all the stuff. It's a wood log cabin. So you don't think that there's some type of exposure that I'm getting there. So my job a couple years ago, after I went through the deeper detox, I just said, I have to get my nervous system in shape enough that I can be exposed, which I was 3 times in this last 6 weeks, not at my cabin, but at 3 places. One was a hotel, one was a friend's house, and one was a client's house. And I knew I got exposed because I had some symptoms that alerted me to it. And I was okay. I took the appropriate things. I pushed my gas on self-care, got extra sleep, hydrated the heck out of myself so I could flush it. So saunas are great, exercise, movement, breathing, breath work, all of that kind of stuff is excellent because a lot of times people are so focused on what they're putting in their mouth to take it away when they really need to focus on the entire system that's going on, around you. What's your epigenetic environment around you?
really good points.
All right. Do we have any other questions we haven't answered? Is there a connection between eating disorders, mold illness? I have been seeing this a lot lately. Wanted to know your take. Disordered eating. Here's the thing. Disordered eating is rooted in the nervous system. Unfortunately, people don't realize that when you overeat, let's say, you're actually pushing your body to stimulate your vagus nerve. So the stomach distends by overeating, and it actually physically distends or turns on the vagus nerve, which is coming from your 10th cranial nerve. And it innervates and goes down through your throat, goes down to almost all of your organs, except for the lower intestine, I believe. And it is part of the parasympathetic nervous system that calms down your organs. And so overeating, a lot of times people are doing it to get a calming effect. And it's not necessarily the food, it's the actual physical thing that's happening in the body when the vagus nerve gets stimulated by the distended stomach, and then the person feels calmer. So when you can put those two things together and you start to realize somebody that has disordered eating, whether it's an addiction towards a particular thing, alcohol or sugar or any type of thing, those are chemical things going on in the body. There could be neurotransmitter issues. There could be a leaky gut. A lot of times I tell people before you start an antidepressant, can you please just pull out dairy out of your what you're eating on a daily basis out of your diet And can you just take some time to really look at your diet and see if we can work on your gut health? Because 90% of your serotonin is made in your gut. So if we can seal up your gut and make it heal up, you may not need that extra hit of serotonin with your prescription. So there's a lot of regenerative work that goes on that have nothing to do with pharmaceuticals and pills and supplements. Do we have any other questions?
Yeah, pandas is hard. Shannon's very hard. And I don't know, Shannon, if you've ruled out mold where you live, but every client I've had who has pans or pandas, um, they're in mold or they were in mold and right, they had to get out and continue to heal. But checking your environment is so key in pans and pandas because
Yep.
mold mycotoxins inflame the brain and that's what you're dealing with in pans and pandas.
Yep. Yes, very much so.
Well, thank you, everybody, for being on the
Yeah.
call. I love the questions. They were great questions.
Yeah, we've gone over for all of you, but you guys were free to leave when we were done, so it's nice to be able to have people stick around and listen. And I'm sure that there's a lot of people that haven't asked questions, but definitely gained from your questions that you've been so courageous to ask. So we want to thank you for coming tonight. We do want to remind you before you go that this 24-hour bonus thing, we just added this week because we thought, you know what, there's people out there that maybe need that little nudge to get on the other side of the fence and get going with this. We are starting January 6th with the course, but we would love to have some type of interaction. If you would like to purchase the course in the next 24 hours, then we can spend some time with you on a strategy call. And you will also get the mold checklist with the next steps in it, as far as the VCS test and a link to the ERMI, which is a dust test that Heather was explaining. That will come with the replay. So make sure you check your email, check your spam folder or your junk folder. 24 hours from the time of this webinar, you should have that email, and that way you can get through it. But we would love for you to join our mission. We would love for you to become an affiliate. If this is something you think is powerful, doesn't matter if you're a wellness practitioner or not, you can definitely reach out to your friends and family and someone else that maybe could benefit from our course.
I can't say anything better.
All right. Well, thank you for coming. We will let you go. Hopefully you have you will get plenty of emails from us, believe me, so that you can get a hold of us. We would love for you to respond to any of them just with your biggest takeaway from this webinar, because it helps us refine it and make it better. And it also helps our deliverability of our emails, because it is a new email that's being sent out so that they don't go to your spam and your junk folder. Thanks everybody for coming. We appreciate your time, and we will hopefully see you in the course. Bye all.
Thank you, everybody. I'm responding to the messages. So Tanya, be looking for an email for the affiliate. Hi, Shannon.
Hi, Shannon. Thanks for your question. I'm going to stop the recording so we don't have to